Hello and welcome to the channel. In today's video, I would like to share with you a very intriguing history of Montandon watches in Brazil. And essentially, we really see this starting in 1825 because we have a Louba-based group of individuals, and we're speaking of here Louis-Auguste Montandon of Leuba. And so in 1825, he decided to immigrate to Brazil. And we have him voyaging to Rio de Janeiro, where he would essentially be under the roof of Henri Grandjean for the first year and a half or so. Now, this voyage of Frederick August, this all lasted approximately 100 days. It was between 94 and 98 days at sea, and he left the port from Bordeaux to Rio. And so this was a very long trip. We're talking of over 3 months, nearly 100 days. Now, he began working with Henri Grandjean for him and for other watchmakers. Now, Henri Grandjean, he is a very famous individual in Swiss watchmaking history. He was one of the founders of the Neuchâtel Observatory. Now, he was making marine chronometers, among other timepieces, watches. But Henri Grandjean was married to Elise Montandon. And so this was the daughter of Isaac Pierre, who was an elder, a church elder in the community of Leuba. And this will have been a first or second cousin to Frederick August. And so they were indeed, we had our previous video, we spoke of these familles alliées. So this, we are speaking of essentially a family alliance here. Now, Henri Grandjean, he took him in. He lived under, Frederick August lived under his roof and worked for him. And there appears to have been some sort of debt, which by 1827, or rather by 1830, Frederick August had repaid this debt to Henri Grandjean for setting him up in business. But so we have this early watchmaker, and we find him remarking that in Rio de Janeiro there were only 12 watch shops. 4 of these were held by Neuchâtel watchmakers. But he had wanted to essentially move into the interior where there were no other watchmakers and no competition. And we see him in 1827 moving into the interior to St. John. It was St. John de El-Rey. This is St. John is the river name, but he was in this small interior community already by 1827, and he had started to learn Portuguese prior to venturing there. But we have him signing letters to his family. We see that his address is listed as a reloyera a São João El Rey. So he was a watchmaker in this location. But it's very, very interesting some of the remarks he makes about the watchmaking, that the Swiss watchmaking parts and springs, etc., were not in vogue. Indeed, watches were generally of the English style. They were larger, they were more clunkier, and they had their own requirements. He wasn't exactly impressed with this in the beginning, but we seem to find him in watchmaking through this 1825 up until at least around 1840, so a good 15 years. But we do know that he repaid all of his debts to his friend and allied family member, this Henri Grandjean, by 1830. So, and by 1839, we hear tell of him already having raised a huge cattle herd or beef herds, and he had started to become a very big cattle rancher in the area, and this would be certainly a mark of his wealth. But he seems to have established a very large family there, and his son indeed This was Eduardo Augusto Montandon. He actually became a doctor. He would later be at a spa in the region of Araxa, and his son became so influential that we see him becoming a deputy in the local representation. This is in Minas Gerais, and this is between 1882 and 1889. And now that son was actually appointed as a temporary governor for the state of Goiás. And he was the governor during this Republican, the proclamation of the Republic, and this was between July and December of 1889. So at this time, this was fundamentally during the exile of Pedro II. So Pedro II is the emperor of Brazil, and he was reigning. Now, he was born in 1825, the same year that Frederick August ventured to Brazil, and he lived until 1891, but he was deposed in 1889. Now this, we will return to this emperor. He's a very interesting character. He indeed was almost a teacher variety. He was very supportive of education, science, and technology. We'll find that he had a very keen interest in the railroads and indeed in watchmaking. And we will be discussing a very interesting object that he had acquired during his life. But this emperor indeed also, we find him visiting Neuchâtel in 1877. He had been traveling Europe in the 1870s, and in 1877 he did make this trip to Neuchâtel, and he was greeted very warmly by the local population. So as we discuss this first Montandon watchmaker who made his way into Brazil, and he became successful enough in business that he was able to begin large-scale cattle farming, and he had very huge herds of these beef cattle. Now, this individual writes to his parents of his cousin Frederic Montandon, who was interested in going to Brazil as well. And so the two appear to have connected, as we see this in the letters. Now, Frederic Montandon is another interesting individual. Now, he was a businessman, and he was living in Paris. Now, Frederic, he was born in 1815. He died in 1883. As I was in the cemetery of Montmartre in Paris, I was looking for the grave of Balthazar Montandon, one of our 18th century watchmakers. I did find the grave of Famille Montandon, and this is Frederic Montandon and his wife. Now, Frederic, so we have him as this businessman, and he would indeed spend 15 years in Brazil. And he seems to have set up various businesses, including a cafe and an import-export business between France and Brazil. And his main business partner was Louis-Auguste Leuba, also known as Auguste Leuba. And so they were fundamentally, they were working under this Auguste Leuba and Co., also Leuba Montandon and Co. But these individuals were, we see them essentially in the 1830s and 1840s, 1850s, in this establishing this very successful business. Now, these individuals were alliés. They were famille alliée. Now, Frederic Montandon was married to a Henriette Antoinette Clementine Guy, and she was called Rose Rouge. So her nickname was the Red Rose. Louis-Auguste Leuba also married a guy. This is Mathilde. So these two were sisters. So these individuals who were in business together, their wives were sisters. This made them famille alliée. So we see this very powerful business formation. Now they established a cafe. They had established import and export as commissaires. So they were bringing goods from Europe, selling them, and re-exporting raw materials, coffee, etc., to Europe. But they also established various navigation lines. We see Frederick establishing a West Africa navigation line, and we also see them working together in another line. This was more or less the Compagnie des Chargeurs Réunis, as it was called. But these were essentially a series of nautical shipping lines, both for passengers and for cargo. And we see them calling it various different ports. They were also apparently founding a Franco-Brazilian bank, the Banque Brésilienne Française, in 1872. And indeed, several of the sons of both of them would be involved as agents, exchange agents. So they probably had a variety of currency exchange at this. That we do see the sons of Frederick Montandon and Auguste Leuba involved in this type of business. But it should be mentioned now, Frederick's wife, Red Rose, this was Henriette, she apparently had taken ill in the 1850s and died suddenly outside of Paris in a house. I was actually in the house owned by a friend of mine where she died. So this was a very moving coincidence. So we do have these alliances at work here. Now, let us continue with we are finding they're establishing business together, and this is where we get a really interesting. We find the movements of these individuals and their children, but in particularly we see the second generation. So Frédéric's son, Frédéric Henri Francois, called Fritz, he had been traveling around Brazil. Now, all of Frederick's children were born in Brazil, and I believe all of Leuba's children were also born in Brazil, and indeed some of them even died there. But they had Paris, Rio de Janeiro, and Santos connections. We have mentions in the local press where we see a Francisco Montandon and a Henry Leuba traveling and this is already in, I believe, was it the 1870s. But they had formed the second generation had formed a business in 1863, Montandon and Leuba Co. And we see the 1867. So we have this is an 1867 article where we see that they're traveling together. So these are the sons of the founders of this business, and they're continuing to do the business. But what's interesting about this Frédéric Henri Francois dit Fritz, he was able to, at the very young age, I believe around 20, he had already established himself in business in 1863 with the son of Auguste Leuba. This is Henry Leuba. And by 1865, Fritz had established himself as the vice consul of France in Santos. So he was a businessman and he was the vice consul. And we see him in this vice consul capacity until much later. It seems to be around 1877 or so, when there's like the last mention of him as vice consul. Only by that time he was absent. So it is to be assumed that this was probably ending. But he continued in business, and we do find very telling signs of the activity of this Leuba Montandon and Company. So they were moving raw materials out of Brazil and moving refined goods into the country. And Now, his partner Henri, and this is Louis Jules Henri Leuba, he would die of yellow fever. And this was in the 1870s. So we find him dying in 1873. But they were co-owning this cafe, so they were indeed dealing with coffee, more or less. But they had a cafe in Santos, and they had this importation-exportation business. They were doing quite well. In fact, by 1872, and this is 9 years after they had established this partnership. This is the second generation. We find them, Montandon, Leuba Co. in Paris, with a capital of 1.5 million francs. They were doing quite well. So this is the total capitalization of all the partners together in this partnership. Now, after this generation, we will see the son of Fritz. This is Paul Montandon and Leuba. Already by 1906, we see him running this operating this business, and he is operating with the other brother of Henry. This is Albert Guillaume. So they were continuing. This is already 3 generations, this partnership now. But you'll notice that Paul Montandon, his alliance name was Leuba, so he appears to have married a Leuba as well, so marrying back into the allied family. So we have this interesting nexus of these family alliances over these generations. I would like to take just a little side note on the children of Frederic Montandon. So this is an individual who established a great dynasty of influential individuals, and we find him in business with Auguste Leuba. But his children, he had a lot of children, but among these we have one Auguste Jean Montandon, and we find him essentially in Paris as an exchange agent. So he was essentially a banker. They had established a bank with Leuba, and we see Leuba's children also involved in these types of roles. Now, we spoke to great degree about Frédéric Henri François, dit Fritz Montandon, who was a businessman and a vice consul for France in Santos. He was incidentally married to his wife in Paris by the son of Balthazar Montandon. This is Auguste Laurent Montandon. He was the head preacher of this largest Protestant church in Paris. And he was married to his wife just months before he died. Within 3 or 4 months, he died after this. So this is a very interesting tie-in to how his cousin married him to his wife. But once again, this pastor traces his roots to Balthazar Montandon, who was one of our early watchmakers. Now, there is another son of Frederic. This is Henri Léon Montandon. Now, he was an engineer. He was born in 1851 and died in 1907. He was a civil engineer, and he was also a very successful businessman, and he seems to have been a partner with his allied family member. This was Claude Prat, and they established Prat, Montandon and Company. And this was a huge business, much along the lines of Leuba and Montandon and Company. They were importing into both Brazil and to Chile. Now, so this Prat and Montandon would be very active in Santiago in Chile and Valparaiso. And they operated essentially department stores with European goods, and they were exporting raw materials, coffee, wines, etc., back to Europe. So they had this business was very successful. We find them, essentially this is called the Casa Pra, the House of Pra, and it was established originally by the wife, the father of the wife of Henri Léon, Claude. This was established in 1865 and later inherited by the relatives. This was Henri, and this continued until 1912. Now, they had a very big operation in this Valparaiso as well, on 51 Esmeralda Street. And indeed, the business had a capitalization, a market capitalization of 2 million francs, this is even larger sounding than Leuba Montandon and Co. They indeed, in 1890 for Christmas, they installed a giant replica of the Eiffel Tower in their department store, with toys hanging off of it. And this department store was one of the first commercial houses with electric lighting. This was in 1883. So we see how illustrious this department store was.